Hi, so let's conclude this 2017 Economics Unit 2 paper. We're going to do question 3 today. So the clock is ticking, so let's go. All right, so the first question we're required to answer is to define the term balance of payments. Now we know that the balance of payments is the difference between the inflows and the outflows of foreign exchange in an economy that is obviously engaging in international trade. So in other words, is the balance sheet of the country. How much money comes in versus how much money goes out. That's what appears on your balance of payments. All right, so part 2 of the question then says, well, list 3 of the main accounts that you would find on the balance of payments. So again, we know the balance payments basically has 3 accounts. The current account, which is probably the major account. Then you got the capital account and the official financing account, the piece that balances it. All right. So they didn't ask us to describe anything, just say list, so just list. All right, don't punish yourself. All right, part B says, well, outline 2 ways in which Caribbean countries benefit from increased exports. Now, I think the key phrase here is from increase exports. Now, so not just from exporting, but from increasing their exports. All right, so 2 ways is one, of course, is that they will earn more foreign exchange, which they can then use to purchase those foreign capital goods, machinery and technology and whatever, to help them increase their production. All right. And secondly, an increase in exports is likely to reduce the unemployment because increased exports suggests that your production has expanded in order for you to deliver this greater output. So to expand production means that you employ more people in your economy. All right. So remember, these answers are not finite answers. I'm just giving you clues as to how you can write your answer. Right. So part B of the question then says, outline 2 advantages and 2 disadvantages of an economic partnership agreement for the Caribbean region. Now, economic partnership agreements are obviously special arrangements between small countries and big countries for the most part, right? For example, the Caribbean has a EPA with the European Union. And the question is basically answering what are 2 advantages of such an arrangement. All right, so let's look at the advantages first. So 2 advantages. So one advantage then is that domestic consumers in the Caribbean should enjoy lower prices for the goods that they purchase from this economic partner. So in this case, you get cheaper goods coming out of Europe because we don't have to pay the duties, or there are no barriers to prevent us from to cause us to pay more money to get the goods into the Caribbean. And another advantage would be that the domestically produced goods now have access to these much bigger markets, which means that you're probably able to get more orders, right? Which should increase your revenue from exports if your goods meet the criteria, and you can produce at the capacity that they want. So that means you will create jobs as production have increased. All right, so that's the advantages. So let's look at the disadvantages now. So one disadvantage would be that the domestic producers of the goods would face even greater competition from larger and more capitalized they're more capitalized economic partner, right? Because it's a bigger country, they got more capital, they've got technology that you haven't seen, so you're under a little more pressure, right? And that's because the government can no longer now shield you with its protectionist policies if they sign on to this agreement, right? So like what happened to sugar in the Caribbean, right? They lost their preferential treatment, and so they had to compete with everybody else to get their sugar sold in the European market. All right, another disadvantage is that some economies may experience fiscal problems because the removal of these import and export duties obviously means a reduction in the government coffers, right? the government wouldn't be able to collect that money, right? And that would, as I said, is a significant loss in revenue in lots of Caribbean countries, right? So their foreign exchange earnings would have declined, and that will probably affect the quality of life of some of the people within those Caribbean nations. Obviously, I can't spell too good because I got a little bracket in there, but don't worry yourself with that. All right, so discuss two policy options then that a country may adopt to correct a trade deficit and boost employment. All right, so there are lots of options. So I'm just going to pick two. Remember, my answer is not finite, so you could put in any others that you feel are useful, but I'm going to give you two of my that I thought about. So let's see. So one policy option is expenditure switching. So this is achieved by encouraging the domestic consumers to buy more locally produced goods and services, and at the same time reduce their preference for the imported substitutes, right? Because you know, in the Caribbean feel that everything from outside better, but they're asking you to buy the locally produced goods. Why? Because this will keep the local businesses operational, right? Keep them open, and if they're open, it may lead to greater demand to increase production, which will mean that more people will get jobs. All right, so that's one policy you could pursue. Another one, of course, is price competitiveness. Now, I'm giving you two answers in this one, but you just pick the one you want, right? And this can be achieved either through devaluation of its currency or reducing its costs of production. Now, we know that a devaluation will make the price of the local goods cheaper to the foreign buyers, right? But of course, it will be more expensive to the locals. And the expectation here is that this would increase demand for the goods because they're now cheaper to those people who are importing them, right? And an increase in demand should, oh, I really can't spell, should result in more jobs being created. However, what we do know is that devaluation tends to be rather painful in the early period, and therefore governments may decide, well, I'm not sure that we really want to take that route. So another option then is they can attempt to see if they can reduce the cost of production. And they can do that either by trying to improve the quality of labor so that you have greater productivity, and at the same time seek alternate input sources which are cheaper than the ones that they currently use. And so that once you can make your price competitive with all these other players in the market, right, then you will see probably an increase in demand, and that should generate more jobs within the economy. All right, so I think that was the last question. Yes, that's the last question, and the clock has stopped anyhow. So until next time, I'll see you.